The Jews have traditionally and historically been at their best, the Zionist project being one, in when there was a concept of unity through dissent. We both have the same objective. We both understand our objective, and we will debate it. Okay, we will debate it till we get to the best idea. Okay, but we will remain unified as a people. As you could probably tell, I'm secular, and as I said, I'm agnostic. But absolutely, I'm a person of belonging. I'm a person of a tribe. I'm a person of ideas as an individual myself, and I find great meaning in the ideas of the Jewish people. Whether I agree with Jewish scholars or I disagree with Jewish scholars, I find great meaning in the fact that Jews inherently are a people of a question. I have immense respect for you guys because you're doing like one of the most important things, which is like the ability of self-reflection, which most people just can't do. I think everyone has the capacity to do it. I don't think that there's like some, unique ability to do it. I think everyone can do it. I think people don't have maybe the ability to understand why they need to do it.
The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?
Welcome to the Jew Function. Hi, Seth.
Hey.
I'm not at home, as you can see. I'm a victim of Iranian aggression. I got stranded in Austria, of all places. Went to visit a friend with a few friends, a friend who was going through some personal issue, and we went to support him and his family. And we came in Thursday. They were supposed to leave Sunday and Saturday night. The airline says, well, there's a slight delay in your flight. And then it's like, there's an indefinite cancellation of your flight. You have to rebook the flight. And they were sitting there watching the news and all the stuff launched at Israel, and we're a bunch of
their spouses guys, and kids are
spouses and kids back home, and they're like, shit, it's like the worst scenario ever. And
was everyone just glued to the TV?
No. Look, they
said, to the Twitter.
Well, no, they said it's 5-6 hours. We went to bed. It's only the Iranians, they send a missile. They tell you it's going to be there in 5 hours. They give you exact time. But when the cable company sends it to commission, they say, "Oh, be home between 8 and 12." They can make it stick. But these guys, they know exactly.
What a weird situation, right? We'll be, they just launched. It'll be there in about 6 hours.
Exactly. So it's a good chance to,
pray.
Have unfinished business. Yes, it's a strange world, but I don't know. So far everything is kind of, it's still cooking, and it's still on around boiling temperature. So I don't know what we're doing. I don't know. I have moments when I think if what we're doing is relevant. If we need to be talking to people about these things, or we should be out there somewhere arming ourselves or doing other things. But I feel like we do need to be doing this. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. So when I stop and I'm thinking, when it was happening, I was like, oh, they're going to get it. Oh, now they're going to get it. Like this kind of just natural knee-jerk thing comes up. And but when I stop and I get back into our materials and I think about what we're doing, it's like, I don't want to actually open it up too much until we bring our guest in. So let's do that, and then let's open up the conversation, okay? Because I've got a lot to say about it, but I don't want to waste it.
All right. So at a time when it seems like anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are one and the same, precisely it's just such a time, as I think it's more important than ever to bring people who have been thinking about it, who've been dealing with anti-Zionist views from all sides, from the right, from the left, from the center, religious, secular. I think we all have a stake in it, as you say, skin in the game. And so our next guest is is someone fresh. I'm really loving such people who are young and enthusiastic about this, that they're not like, old and have, done a million things and already have a certain view that's maybe set. The younger people more flexible with their minds and opinions. And I'm very happy to invite to our show Samuel Hyde, who's a fellow at the Jewish People Policy Institute based in Jerusalem. But he's been around. He's going to tell us a little bit about his background, and we're just going to have an amazing conversation. So, Sam, please, thanks for coming. So you're in Israel too right now, right? Is that correct?
I'm based in Tel Aviv and go to Jerusalem for work here and there.
And your accent sounds, what is that, South African?
African. Yeah, I was born and raised in South Africa, and I made Aliyah a few years back. So it's been an interesting time for me as a South African Israeli with everything that's happened of the last few months between the two countries.
Yeah, I would say we had another South African here, Rolene Marks. You know her, probably. You know her.
Yeah, I know Rolene. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
sure.
So yeah, and we talked to her before. Well, we spoke to her before the 7th, and then she was on a panel. We did a live. We started doing lives and panels after the 7th, and she was there, very very passionate. And in fact, while we're doing the live panel, there were sirens going off, and I was already in the shelter. My office is in the bomb shelter, so I didn't go anywhere.
You see, you did this the right way. I don't have it set up like that. So every time that happens, I got to run downstairs to the shelter. You know.
Yeah. Well, so tell us a little bit. How did you? I'm just curious. I'm sure everyone is. How did you end up taking this, the Jewish cause? You're a young guy. You sound smart. I heard you in the podcast. You're a bright guy. What's the deal with the Jews?
Yeah. It was an interesting thing. I mean, I was interested in politics and philosophy far before I was interested in the Jewish issues, in the sense that, I grew up Jewish and I grew up a Zionist, and I went to a Jewish day school, and being Jewish was always part of my life. But I wouldn't have, if you told me when I was 15 that this is what I'd be doing with my life, I probably would have laughed and called you a liar, essentially. But basically, it was university that changed things for me, because being in that political realm and I suppose the space of ideas and debate, I realized that I had been living in a bubble. I was living in the Jewish community, which is very tight-knit in South Africa, and my friends were Jewish and my girlfriends were Jewish. And all of a sudden, I'm hearing all these things that are being said about the state in which I've visited and the state in which I feel kin to some degree or to some capacity. And it faced me to confront certain realities. And that kind of converged these two pathways of politics and philosophy and Jewish issues, Israel, anti-Semitism in the Middle East. And basically from that, it just spurred into my career working in think tanks, related to Middle East affairs, internal Israeli politics and democracy. Now, as you said, I'm at the Jewish People Policy Institute. So we work on internal Jewish affairs, questioning things like religion and state, liberal democracy, the different religious and secular factions within Israel, as well as stuff like anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism in the diaspora and how that is playing into the current moment. So it was kind of just this natural collision course of who I was meeting with what my interests were that kind of created what I do, I suppose.
And I'm curious, before Seth jumps in, because I want to already go deep into it. Looking, through this work that you're doing with the Institute and looking at the relationship between, secular and religious and the different streams and different powers in Israel and everything that's unfolded up until the 7th and now as well. Have you, and also looking at anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, have you found any links between the internal state of affairs and sort of the attitudes of the world towards us?
I mean, look, it's twofold.
Even correlation. I'm not expecting.
Yeah. No, it's definitely twofold for me. in the sense of, I believe that there is a specific strand of people which have a very specific idea and ideology, and some of them are anti-Semites and some of them are not, who it really doesn't matter what Israel actually does. It's more what their views on the existence of a Jewish state in any part of the land are, and therefore really whoever Israel's government is or isn't, and whatever Israel's policies are or aren't, it's really not going to, at the end of the day, make much of a difference. But then you've got otherwise reasonable and rational people that exist who have a fundamental issue with, you know, who is leading our country in certain directions that the country is heading in. So I would agree with both. That's why I said it's twofold for me. I protested against the government basically every single week for 9 months leading up to October 7th. I was convinced at that point that the government was instituting essentially an anti-Zionist vision in practice. Like, you know, people can call themselves anything they want to, they can label themselves anything, but if in practice your ideology and your political program leads to an anti-Zionist outcome, then that's enough for me. But it wasn't just merely ideological, it was also the secular religious element. I've been saying from almost week one that this really had nothing to do with right versus left. It had nothing to do with Netanyahu. It had nothing to do with even Mizrahim, Ashkenazim, although the government liked to play on that because that's the kind of political tool that they use. It really was a battle for the fabric of the state, a secular, liberal, democratic state in the view of the people who were against the government, or in a more, I'm not going to call it a theocracy, but a more religiously driven state. So I always saw it was a fight for the very fabric of the country. Before the war, I said that this was the worst government in Israel's history, and I think their mishandling of multiple things, and given the fact that they have ruled over the worst year in the country's history, I think that, you know, there's certain things that come with October 7th, which are confirmation, and there's certain things which challenge you to undergo some sense of consciousness shift or reevaluate things, and I think that's healthy. I've tried to engage in both. When it comes to this government, I mean, I think that they lack any sense of ability to be strategic, just in any sense of the word. And that's where this, sorry, to finish it off, just to bring it back around, that's where my issue with them really comes in. I don't think an anti-Semite is going to change their opinion based on a decision Netanyahu makes or doesn't make. But we do have allies at a diplomatic level in the world. And, you know, honestly, for me, from October 8th, this government has mishandled every one of their strategic decisions. I agree that we needed to go to war with Hamas. I agree with the aims of the war. I just think on a diplomatic and political level, they've mishandled almost every single decision they've made.
I have a question on that. Two questions. I'm sorry. I know you want to
go ahead. No, it's okay.
I wonder which one to go with first. Well, okay, I'll start with the more tactical, more political. We're not really a political podcast. We're not in the ins of every little political thing, but we do look at trends and how forces affect things, right? So whether they come from this side or that side doesn't really matter. We look at, okay, here's a force, here's a reaction to that force, here's an outcome, here's a reaction to that outcome, and so on and so forth. So looking even just from a the most material, pragmatic point of view there is, don't you feel that when a government is challenged so violently, aggressively, when inside the country a small minority is really aggressively going against everything and this thing, it just plain weakens the government's ability to even think strategically? Just again, from a purely pragmatic standpoint, this is not the US when you have 300 million people and
yes,
a few hundred thousands are protesting somewhere. This is Israel. It's really tiny.
Yeah. I mean, are we speaking in a post October 7th world, or like
no, both?
I think pre October 7th, you could say it was different in that if you look at all the polling, a majority of people were not for the reform, and those that were, there was a majority, meaning over 50%, who were against a reform, and then there was a percentage of people who were for a reform, but not the way in which the government was going about it. Now, I think that what one can say is again, it's not straightforward, but the reality is that when a government comes into power, democracy is not just about a majority rule. When a government tries to fundamentally alter the fabric of a country, you have to expect pushback. And thank God that there's pushback, because that means we live in a democracy, and democracy is messy, and democracy is fundamentally flawed in many ways. But I think it was Churchill who said it's still the best of the worst ideas that we have. I think that's still true today. But ultimately, what I'm saying is that it's the government's responsibility to lead the country in the way in which they think they should lead the country, and the people have the power to disagree with them. I think there's a big misconception that's come about in Israel in the last year since this happened, a conflation between unity and uniformity. And there's a lot of political forces in this country which use the word unity, and I'm speaking predominantly about the government and certain elements of certain political factions that support the government, who use the term as Jewish unity as a weapon for uniformity. And those are not the same things. In fact, the Jews have traditionally and historically been at their best, the Zionist project being one, in when there was a concept of unity through dissent. We both have the same objective. We both understand our objective, and we will debate it. Okay, we will debate it till we get to the best idea. Okay, but we will remain unified as a people. But
that's a question. Do you feel like that people share the same objective? That's the thing that I was getting a little uncertain about.
I think that, yeah, I think that was maybe implied in my thing of this was a fight for the fabric of the state, not just institutional, not just legal. I think you have a portion of the public who view the state through the, let's say, the traditional secular Zionist lens, whether they identify as Zionist or not. That's the way in which they view the state, a Jewish democracy that exists, with a Jewish majority that has a secular rule in which secular and religious people are free to exercise their rights and their practice in any way, shape, or form. And then you have people who want to live in a more religious orientated state. Again, I'm not going to say it's theocracy. There are certain elements in certain parties who would like a theocracy, but I just say that it's more religiously driven. And for me, on a personal level, as someone who I'm agnostic, right? That's the way in which I view the world. So for me, the benefit I see, okay, this is personal for me. This is the benefit that I see in a secular democracy, is that I have immense love and care for my fellow religious Jews, and I want them to be able to practice Judaism, which is a part of who I am, even if I'm not certain on the existence or non-existence of God. I want them to be able to practice that in a meaningful way.
Good. So let's leave God out of it for a second. Just the whole concept of what is a Jew, I think, is a big question, because I think it's hard to deny. And Seth and I, you can look at this. We're not brought up religious. I was brought up the most secular you can be in Israel, northern Tel Aviv, and Seth is, from the US, obviously not religious.
Yeah.
But the more we looked at our history and at everything that transpired and the way our history was shaped, you could see that there's something which maybe we'll get to define together, but there was something that was clearly informing that trajectory, that breaking away completely from that Jewish essence.
And let's not refer to it as any. Let's not refer to it as God or something else. Let's try and feel it as something else, because as soon as we say God or anything like that, it really confuses things.
Fundamental, then there's a
So but there's something, some force, some influence, something. We're not going to define it in some way that we all are going to attach some meaning to it. But I just wanted to give a little caveat there, Spiegler.
Yeah, and we will ask you, what is the definition of a Jewish, of a Jew? What is that? But even before the definition, there's clearly something going on here that's you can't escape. Jews try, as much as we, as we like, we're not able to assimilate. Every time we try to assimilate, to be like, hey, we look like everyone else, boom, whiplash, and society just kind of vomits you out of it. You're not. You're trying to be like everyone else. You're not. And every time we're trying to be too within ourselves and isolate ourselves. Oh, you're isolationists. You're planning something. You're conspiring. So it's almost like it's impossible. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're stuck in this place. But this place is clearly not a secular place, and it's clearly also not like a full-on Orthodox with a thing. But there's somewhere in the middle there, that place that exists that has been hardwired into our being. And my feeling in Israel, at least, is that there were loud voices that were trying to really kind of erase that. Like they're almost like they've had enough. I grew up in a house where like, oh, these guys, they mooch off of, and they don't go to the army, and there's this, the boiling hate toward the other, right? And I think that's also not right. But my point is, it came to a place where one side was trying to cancel another side, and maybe by trying to cancel the other side felt the need to overpower the other side, and you'll get to this zero-sum game between these two sides, where in reality you cannot. And I'm shocked, and I'm sorry, and this is the last thing I'm going to say. I'm shocked when you walk in Tel Aviv and people like, oh, we're not going to teach, the Bible in school because it's like you're converting my son to Judaism. And what do you want to do instead? Oh, we're just going to eat a pork shish kebab, whatever. Like you're going to replace 2,000 years of ideas with your freedom to eat pork. Fine, okay, but I mean, how does they don't even live together at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree. I mean, as you could probably tell, I'm secular, and as I said, I'm agnostic. So, but absolutely, I'm a person of belonging. I'm a person of a tribe. I'm a person of ideas as an individual myself, and I find great meaning in the ideas of the Jewish people. Whether I agree with Jewish scholars or I disagree with Jewish scholars, I find great meaning in the fact that Jews inherently are a people of a question. And that's why it's so important that you said, what is a Jew? Because it's the same question of what is a Jewish state, which has really been the central argument of Israel since 1948. No one can really define what a Jewish state means. And in some degree, in some capacity, and this is like the argument I always try and make, that has what has maintained our democracy. I really believe that in a very odd form, because at the time Israel was born, I mean, the global reality is the fall of empires and the birth of nation states. You've got about 100 new countries throughout this period that are born, all of them, virtually all of them, born as, liberal democracies, a multi-party system, freedom of the press. Almost all of them, besides Israel and India, just plummet into semi-fascist dictatorships, communist states, a mixture of the two. And somehow this tiny little country surrounded in the most both unique but hostile environment, more so than the majority of these other countries who plummet out of democracy, is the one that's able to maintain it. And I think because of that fundamental question, there's had to be a system in place which allows for that question fundamentally to be fought over, to be debated. And I think that was the explosion that you saw, because one side felt that the thing is can you actually ever answer that question? My belief is not fully. Not fully. I believe that I can come to my conclusion and you can come to your conclusion. I don't know, we might actually come to the same conclusion, but I'm saying holistically across people, I don't believe that we can actually come to a fundamental conclusion of what is a Jewish state? What does a Jewish state mean? Right? We have ideas, we all can come to our own conclusions, but I don't think that we can get 100% consensus on that idea. And in some ways, I think that that's a positive thing, because the reason why there was such a vitriolic response to this government is beyond the idea of reform. It's that contract felt like it was being broken. There is a contract here between the two people which is silent. You see the Jewish state like this. We see the Jewish state like this. We need that in order to even live in the same state, and you are violating that by trying to overthrow it. I really think there was something deep to that element going on. You heard something said on the streets at protests, that was something that you could conclude. And so, you know, I don't know how I got to that point, but it was related to what you were asking about, you know.
No,
The
it's
crystallization. The
Yeah.
crystallization of the point is that you felt that there was something there that was going to split this thing that was always being held together by something, right? That's what you're
The
saying. You felt
silent
that it came to a
contract.
point.
Yeah, the silent contract between the Jewish people, between the people of Israel. There's a silent contract about a Jewish state that, and the very, I mean, from the first Zionist Congress, no one agreed what a Jewish state meant. And it was precisely because of that they, you know, one of a contributing factor, but precisely because of the attitude of unity through dissent, that they were able to actually be a successful Congress.
I don't think anyone else is doing what we're doing, and yeah, and that's exactly it. Nobody can comprehend what we're talking about. Who would even say that anti-Semites have anything valuable to say without saying we're anti-Semitic or we're self-hating Jews? But there's something that everybody's missing in this whole picture, and the reason why the solution is so close is because we're not waiting for anyone else to change. We're not waiting for the laws to be enacted. We're not waiting for a new politician to get elected. The answer is way closer than everybody thinks.
Like us, hit the bell thing on the YouTube so you can get a notification when a new episode is up. Well, this is the Jew function, and let's get back to our guest.
Precisely because of the attitude of unity through dissent, that they were able to actually be a successful Congress.
Totally. So my question to you is, as someone who was actually protesting, against the, siding with the protest. I'm not saying you're leading the protest or anything, but I'm curious. As someone who, because I maybe attended one demonstration, but just to feel a little bit. But as someone who was there, who's maybe hearing people, talking to people, to those people have any definition of what is a Jew, an Israeli Jew, a Jew in general?
Yeah,
what is that?
I think that there was this conception that because the people that were look, you've in any group, you had 150,000 people on the street, week in, week out. It's estimated that there was close to 1 to 2 million people throughout that 9 months that come out to this protest. It's not the same every individual 150,000 every week, but the point is that, yeah, you're going to find people who aren't going to be able to answer that question. And you're going to find people who actually don't care to answer that question. But I think the fundamental misunderstanding was that because those people were against an added level of what they at least perceived as religious control at a state level, at a government level, that they must be anti-Jewish, that they must not be connected to Judaism, that they must not understand what it means to be a Jew. And I don't think that helped the conversation either. Because the minute you turn, these people saw it as like, this isn't a question of whether I'm Jewish or not. This is a question of, I don't want to live in a religious run state. But I can put it to you this way. I think most people at the protest would be able to engage that way. If you listen to a lot of people were saying, they said it themselves, we're here because we believe in the principles of what our grandparents built at the founding of the state, and we believe that this government is trying to erode that. So the founding principles of the state was inherently Jewish. So, maybe in a different way to the way in which Haredim engaged with Judaism, of course, which is, the thing. But it was something that I think that was probably the thing that most upset me throughout those 9 months, was that being a part of that group inherently to some people was like, well, they're not as Jewish as me. And I think that that's where my problem with religion and politics actually stems from, is because if you see your politics as your religion, then anyone who disagrees with your politics is in some way, or to some capacity, if you want to go to the extremity of it, is not just disagreeable, but is to some degree completely immoral, because there's
What is the right what is the right way for people who disagree so much to have a healthy I mean, your one option is just cancel them, or kill them would be the most extreme, just get rid of them.
no.
The other, okay, no, so fine, but banish them to the desert, could be another one, or re-elect someone else, or what is the way that, suppose someone came out to the street and, okay, Bibi, comes out of his house and says, Sam, let's talk, I want to hear. So what is the way that these two sides do come to something? Because I hear, I just want to take an aside for a second. When you need to, I'm talking about like from the position of the United States, we had like a guy, Bernie Sanders. This is not a Jewish issue now, right? Like senator from Vermont who was going to run for president, right? Like if you're dealing with like Putin and Ahmadinejad and people like this, like it doesn't matter that you're like a sweet, nice guy from Vermont. Like you need to go to work and negotiate with Putin and Ahmadinejad. Like if you're not the toughest, baddest dude on the block, we're all screwed. So on the one hand, like I want my, nice Vermont and all that, but you don't need to like the guy, but the guy who's going to negotiate against people like that better be the baddest dude on the block or we're in trouble, right? So I guess the question is, that's just kind of like an aside. Like we don't have to like the person. This person is playing a role like on the chessboard, and they need to have certain qualities in order to be in a role. But that being said, how do we come to some kind of agreement that we all have these different roles to play? Nevertheless, we have to live there has to be some symbiosis amongst them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, firstly, on you need to be the toughest guy on the block. It's very true in the Middle East as well for any, prime minister of Israel. And I also agree that you, as a voter, you don't need to want to sit down and have a beer or a coffee with your prime minister. In fact, usually you actually want the opposite of that. At least in my view, I basically look at a prime minister and a government to a similar capacity that I look at an army. You're sending them into political battle every single day, and that's a very specific kind of person who's willing and able to do that. So I don't expect it. My critique of where we're at with the country and the leadership right now is got nothing to do with a personal dislike for certain characters. I mean, I can personally dislike Donald Trump, which I do, and acknowledge that his administration's idea with the Abraham Accords broke a decades-old paradigm that was actually, I mean, you can now in hindsight, you can look at certain things that could have been tweaked to actually be better. But I mean, it was a brilliant idea. I'm never going to take that away.
A lot of things. There was a lot of things.
Netanyahu did some brilliant things. My issue is that we're now sitting at a point in time where even the opposition leaders, right, are basically for the last few years have just been a more polite, less corrupt version of Bibi Netanyahu. Okay,
that's what we've been saying. All politicians are crap.
Our
question is about the people, not the politicians.
Okay, so from a perspective of the people, then it's a simple understanding that is everything that we're trying to do in the best interest of the state of Israel? Is our primary goal, every person from every single political camp, from every single religious affiliation, are we doing that even when we vehemently disagree with each other because we believe that our way or what our idea is or what we're putting forward is in the best interest of the state of Israel? And if that's the case, then you find the common ground. But we haven't had that conversation yet because we disagree with each other vehemently.
The fascinating thing about the human body, for example, is you don't have to have any understanding of how the lungs and how the gallbladder and how the reproductive system and circulation system works, right? Like eat the steak, go sit in the sun, do a little exercise, and all of the systems work without you having to know anything. Same thing with a car. I don't need to know how the combustion engine works. Just put the key in and push the pedal, right? So instead of us focusing on the areas that we all disagree with each other so much, let's inject some health into the system. Let's find all of the places where all of these groups agree. Let's sit and talk about each other's families. Let's sit and you know, why does it always take an October 7th until we're willing to say, oh, he has a son too, and I have a son, and they're side by side, right? We need to look at all of these things that we can connect on, because once we create that warmth between us, I'm way more willing to listen to what you have to say. And you're way more willing, not even just to listen, I'm more willing to look out for your best interest, and you're more willing to look out for mine once we can bridge all of those things. But to find the point of contention, like they do here around abortion, for example, right? And then just throw everyone at each other's throats around abortion, when probably 80% of everything else below that they could agree on. Right. And so then the whole thing becomes about abortion, and then people can't even talk to each other. So as Jewish people, and then this gets to now, you know, we don't want to go like to our like spiritual message, but we can't help but saying there's something. Let's not say spiritual, not say God or anything, but our feeling is that when we connect between us and find that good connection between us Jews, specifically Jews, and it shouldn't be that hard. There's not that many of us. Other nations will want to connect with us. And when we are hating each other, we project onto the world that they can hate us. So yes, okay, so we need strong military, we need strong negotiators, we need all of that. But what else do we need? We need the people to unite amongst them, to find these places of connection, of good connection between them, and then we'll see a change in the world. We'll see that the enemies wouldn't dare to, we'll see a change in the attitude we feel of the world towards us.
So I, because I think, like, for me, there was two things there that jumped out at me. And the one I really agree with, and then the one I have a little bit of a different view on. The one I really agree with is just the basic concept of people find the Jewish ability to be unified, like what happened on October 7th and October 8th, despite the country being completely divided before that, unique and profound and inspiring. I know this because I'm friends with some Iranian activists, and they actually said to me, this is what we as a people need to be able to do against our regime. How do you do it? And I spoke about unity, not uniformity, and unity through dissent. And I actually just happened to hear today her on a podcast, and she mentioned that I had taken her through this thing. So yes, I think that the Jewish people in that capacity, when it comes to unity, have a unique ability. One could say maybe there's something mystical to it. I'm not sure. One could say this part of our experience for 2 million years. It's a part of necessity. For 2,000 years. It's a part of necessity. So I'm not sure exactly what the point is. But the other thing that I'd say is my effect on people hating us is actually slightly different, in that I don't believe that people hate us because we're not us. Okay? I believe that whenever you look at the pattern of anti-Semitism within a society, there's never been an example in history, at least in recorded history, in which there's a deep-seated hatred for actually something every single Jew did to them. It's less about what the Jews do and more about a reflection or an amazing warning sign for the non-Jewish world, if they'd like to see it that way, of their own society in the midst of a crisis. Now, that crisis could be economic. That crisis could be social.
But if this, let's hold on. Let's take it step by step. This is brilliant. So if that's the case, and we were then to accept our role in that, okay, so then what does that require of us?
Look, I mean, can I caveat that with the foundation of why I think it's the Jews who bear the brunt when it comes to that? Because people like to say scapegoatism, and, you know, yeah, that's an argument to be made, but it's like, why? well, why the Jews? I mean, there's plenty of people that you can scapegoat.
We're with you.
And I think that, like, at the end of the day, it goes beyond just this idea that the Jews were always a minority where they were and didn't have power and they were defenseless and everything. I think it really goes very deeply into, if you look at kind of the past 2,000 years of anti-Semitism as we understand it today in the modern context, which kind of dates back to the early onset of Christianity. There's this inherent belief among Christian theology that the Jews are inherently, by fact of birth, a moral failure. And that is based on the concept of the original sin. The Christians believe by fact of birth we have proclivity towards sin. The Jews don't believe that.
Not everyone, by the way. We just had a reverend on the show, and she was.
Oh, yeah. I mean, of course, now there's I'm going back to the origins of it, like the days of the early church and the Christian establishment. I mean, today you got so many different. You got so many Christians around the world, and you got so many different factions that I want to go back to 2,000 years ago with kind of the budding idea. And this idea of the original sin and that by fact of birth, you have a proclivity to sin, and therefore, essentially, the way in which to redeem yourself of that proclivity to sin is to subscribe to the doctrine of Christianity and to redeem yourself through Christ, through the blood of Christ, and therefore create a world in which there's some sort of salvation, a universalist aspiration. And because the Jews at that time were not prepared to relinquish their identity, number one, for Christianity, and because they didn't believe in the original sin, they therefore could not be seen as a people choosing wisely between good and evil. So any single time throughout human history, and I want to relate that before we move on just to progressive anti-Semitism today in America and Europe. So when you get to human history, the last 2,000 years, every time anti-Semitism functions, when there's a rot in a society, people look for people to blame. And they never look for who's the good person to blame in this. They look for who is the evil of our society. And there's something inherent to the structures and institutions and theologies of the way in which I want to just generalize and say the non-Jewish world. Let me put it that way. Understand the world and the lens through which they view it, that see the Jews in some capacity, even subconsciously, as a moral failure who cannot choose wisely between being good and evil. And that's why when there's a crisis within their society, there is this inherent focus on the Jews and this kind of direct line to, you could say, scapegoat the Jews. That's where you could bring in the scapegoatism. That's where I think it comes from. And I think you can trace something similar in Islam as well. Not based on the original sin or the proclivity to sin, but a similar kind of pattern that we see happening in Islam. So there's that. The question, I suppose, is to your question, what we do about it. Like, where do we come into that?
Jew function is really it's a desperate attempt to change something about the rise in anti-Semitism that doesn't seem to go away, and looking at history usually ends with something terrible before we reach relative quiet again. But we don't want to reach something terrible. We want to do it now. So that's why we're doing this podcast. And if you like this, also consider leaving a small contribution on our Patreon channel. Right. We both have day jobs, by the way, so we're not hoping to make money from this. We're hoping to see some change of heart.
Any funds are used to get this out there, to get this to people. We consider this the same way you go out every day to get money to feed your family, put a roof over your head. This is also critically important to our future, to our safety, to a good world, not only for Jews, but for everyone.
Well, this is the Jew function, and let's get back to our guests.
We focus on how everyone else is looking at us, or, like, for example, they told us our whole life, like, stay in school and don't do drugs. But if you're the best at doing drugs and you drop out of school, then you can become a big rock star. Like, if you're the best at your thing, so everyone's got their vision of, even the I think, what is it, the Filipinos who never even saw Jew, like, where's these places in Southeast Asia? They never even saw what?
I think
Indonesia.
It was Indonesia.
Indonesia, right. They never even saw
yeah.
a Jew, but they have reasons why they hate us, right?
Yeah.
So So the Christians' claim could be more legitimate. They have some evidence, that they can bring up in court. Um,
Not really,
from
because
our
we
side,
didn't actually kill Jesus, for the
No,
record.
but if they say we were,
this is why I'm taking it to the very foundations of Christianity with the original sin. I mean, all of that kind of, the Jesus part plays into it.
but if we help them reach their goal, they'll be happy about it. So everyone will be happy if we help them all reach their goal, and I think we can. So I want to focus less on what everyone else thinks about us, and I think that there's a place for military, and I think that there's a place for diplomats, and I think there's a place for people to go out and have these dialogues. But that's not our business, Leo and my business. Our business is what can we do amongst ourselves, because we see that from there, all of the other benefits will come. So we're interested in what can we do? What is our perspective of who we are? And what is our vision for what we need to be? Is that right, Leo? Did I nail that? Is that the right question? Yeah, I don't hear you.
Sorry, I'll add even more to it. I think after 70 years in Israel, so again, only looking at ourselves, talking about ourselves. After 70 years or so in Israel, it's not a long time, but already you can see problems. Now, it's clear that Jews, they thrive on this, on the fact that we have these diverse opinions, our ability to contain diversity in thought. That's something that regular people don't necessarily, automatically have. Okay, let's put it this way. I'm being very gentle about it, but it's true. Jews are able to hold opposites, and it's tough. It's a tough proposition. And in fact, we're the best when we are able to hold all the opposites together and make one kind of whole out of it. That's sort of the essence of that. And you can see that Jews are very opinionated. I'm just kind of adding the ingredients to the cake, right? So we can hold these opposites. Also, we're very opinionated. We also happen to have different opinions. It's not like I'm here in Austria. Everything is so mild-mannered. The food is.
I remember that. I remember that when I was there, very mild-mannered. I was not used to it.
Everything is so mild. There's no conflict. There's no life. Life is a result of conflict, managed conflict. This is life. This is where you get energy from. This is when you get progress. You get new life. It's always masculine and feminine. It's always oppositions at an intersection, right? And Jews are the living embodiment of that in humanity. We are. And we also have, again, a lot of different opinions, even within the same group, even within the same sect, even with the same.
100%.
Even within the same person. It's like
within Satmar, half of them want to kill the other Satmars. It's like every group of us, there's like two groups.
Hold on, I'm going somewhere with it. So the question is like, why are we trying so hard to do it the way everyone else is doing it? We're trying to have this government that one will every few years you'll have an election, and then you'll destroy what the other half was doing, and then you start fresh, and then they'll destroy it. It's like it's such a waste of energy. And when you look in the past, you took us 2,000 years. I also will take us 2,000 years ago. We had actually a rule by a group, not by an individual or a party. It was a group, right? The Sanhedrin, that was a group of people. There were different sizes, 60, 120, 100, it doesn't matter. And it changed places and form, but it was a group that was able to contain all these oppositions. And so I think, why aren't we able to maybe stop and say, maybe something about this approach is not working. Just trying to, I'm going to try to force my views on you, and you're going to have to take my views. And why can't we take a step back and acknowledge that we'll never be the same? We'll never share the same thing. We're never going to be able to be, governed in this usual way. We have to find a different way of doing it. Why is it so outlandish to think that there's maybe a better way, not the worst of the best of the worst,
and that he's going to,
like Churchill said.
They'll continue to have different opinions, and they'll continue to have different opinions, and somehow, in that energy is where we're going to, between those forces is where we create all the incredible energy. It doesn't make sense who we are, like Jews. It doesn't make sense. Like, where's the Egyptians? Where's the Greeks? Where's the Romans? Like, it doesn't make sense what we do. It doesn't make sense to be surrounded like you guys are from every side and be thriving and existing there. Like, none of this makes sense. And like even the people's, like Hamas will like throw a gay guy off a building, and Tel Aviv will have a gay parade, and then on every U.S. campus, all the LGBTQ people are saying like pro Hamas. Like nothing makes sense about this whole thing that's happening. So we have to like decide for ourselves our future, because by looking at the rest of the world, it's like spinning and crashing, and it's not our path.
Yeah.
And we're looking to you for all the answers. I'm just kidding. No, we're just having this discussion. We're always trying to get this.
I can say, you brought up something about in the past with the Jewish Council, right? I mean, the kind of modern version of that is a parliamentary democracy where the power is not in the hands of the Supreme Court or the government, but it actually rests with the Knesset, except we've confounded that system here through thresholds and threshold raising and coalition building and whatever, and actually essentially we've made a kingmaker out of a system which actually the parliament is the kingmaker, but we've made one individual the kingmaker. So we've confounded our own system. That's why I look at the system. I say we don't need to destroy the system. We just need to understand it better, and what it was kind of implemented as, and where it's going wrong in practice. So that's that, but I understand that was not the main point of what we were speaking about. I mean,
no, this is good. This is good. What we're trying to say is bring the power back to the people. Stop demanding stuff from the government, the politicians, and bring some of the power back to us. Bring some of these things which, by the way, again, religious or not, Jewish sages have been writing about it. Can you imagine the people have been talking about this very thing? Our mandate to unite above the differences. There's a saying in Judaism: love covers all crimes. I don't know if you heard it. Okay, this is it. You have so many crimes. Now is your chance to cover it with love, and we fail to do that. We thrive in the crime part, but where's the love? Where's I mean, that's what we're.
I have immense respect for you guys, because you're doing like one of the most important things, which is like the ability of self-reflection, which most people just can't do. I think everyone has the capacity to do it. I don't think that there's like some unique ability to do it. I think everyone can do it. I think people don't have maybe the ability to understand why they need to do it. And I think I'll explain to you with like an analogy that's outside the Jewish people that was essential for progress on the principle of self-reflection. If you look at the American South 100 years ago, there were people that would leave on a Sunday morning church dressed in their Sunday best and go to a public hanging of a black person. And then they would have a photo with that hanging black body and take home a souvenir. Now, there's a reason why that's not I mean, this is an extreme example, but there's a reason why that's not happening anymore. Okay, of course, there's problems with racism in America. Well, that's a whole separate debate that can be argued, but that's not happening anymore because people underwent a process essentially of self-reflection, of a collective shift. So I think the thing that I'm saying, what's so important about what you guys are doing is that if you're not prepared to confront the problem in the first place and then reflect, create this kind of element of self-reflection, then there's no progress. So there's far too many people who seek progress but are not willing to undergo that kind of collective consciousness shift, right? And I think like I try to keep an open mind to things in general that I don't like. And, when I look at, we spoke about Hamas and gay people. When I look throughout the Middle East, I have an issue with radical Islam, like I believe most people should. And I'm not really ashamed to say it because I think it's a massive, massive issue in the world. But I also don't think that what we're seeing in parts of the Middle East, using that same example in America, is unique to Islam. Okay, you're seeing hangings happening all across. Well, we saw that in America. So the question is that, you know, where do we get to the point where the self-reflection kicks in, and how much damage is done up until that point? And the only thing that I can say is we need more people like you guys.
We have them. There's 15 million of us.
No, we want to start, even though, so you know, there's a couple billion people in the world, a few billion Christians, a few billion Muslims, you know, a couple million Jews, like a handful. And even in the Jews, we don't need to start with everyone. We need to just start with a small group. We need to have a small group who can start doing this reflection amongst us, start talking amongst us. Right. So I have a feeling that probably we have some different opinions about certain things. We may be a little more to the right, even though both of us were like, you know, dreadlocked hippies, but like we're probably more to the right now. But it doesn't matter. Like, we want to find and connect with at first a small group, and then expand the circle and expand the circle, because it's like a network. Like we also, in a lot of our materials, and Leo maybe could send the nubs and the hubs and nodes video. You know, that the way that we talked about before, I don't need to know how all these organ systems work, right? I just need to nourish the body, and the system takes care of it. We also, nature does this as well. You see how mycelium, like the underground, it spreads like in the same way as we build subways, in the same way that like there's natural systems that we don't recognize we're part of. If we start connecting to each other,
and we don't need much of that change agent in order to bring about change.
Nature does most of it. It's like you take a man and a woman. It's like, what, you know, besides the hour or two, or if it was a good night, you know, few that they spent in bed, what, they formed the ears? Did they craft the brain? I mean, what did they do compared to everything that nature did to make the person? Right? Their effort was very minimal compared to what nature did.
You just need to bring two opposites together. Yeah, you just need to bring two opposites together, and have,
and nature's willing to.
That's
the
fight,
thing.
But in a good way.
That's what we didn't. We didn't want to bring up any God, spirituality, anything. There's so many examples that nature is prepared to do all of the work.
Yeah.
We just need to just put those things together and hold them together in a good way. And it probably only doesn't take a lot of us to start, but we need to start with a few and then add more, and probably also, as we get into more and more outer circles, it doesn't need to be as intense, because, right? Yeah.
I mean, so I maybe what I'm going to say is more questions that I have more than actual answers. The one thing is that, like, because you brought up, like, maybe we have these like fundamental, you know, differences in things. I find that it depends who I'm talking to, because left-wing people think I'm right-wing and right-wing people think I'm left-wing. I never know what that means, but I know which policies I support, and I know that these ones are left-wing and those ones are considered right-wing. So it's like, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, beyond that, it becomes a question really of worldview, of what we think we are. Because, like, for me, I believe that we are what we assign ourselves to be. But I don't necessarily think that that means that that is some sort of inherent truth or reality that can be proven. So what I mean by that is, I walk through Jerusalem and I see something in Jerusalem that in reality is just a rock. But that rock has immense meaning because we have assigned it meaning. But if you had to put that rock, without me knowing, that very rock, in Rome, where I'm actually going to be in 2 weeks, I'd walk past it and not be any wiser. So the rock has meaning. Yeah, the rock has meaning because it's been assigned by human beings, not because it's holy, right? In and of itself.
Perfect.
You don't feel the rock.
So what do we do? Exactly right. Everything is relative, but the only thing that we can actually have is some sort of a shared meaning. If we have a shared something, then it doesn't depend on this external rock or this other thing. right? It's actually something that we assign to ourselves, that we sort of, and we do it out of a feeling because that's the only thing we have. You can't really prove anything if you think about it. If you go really deep enough into stuff, there's nothing to prove that you can prove. You only follow what you actually feel, right? People believe what they feel to be true. Okay, that's how it works.
Yeah, you pursue truth that you try find, and you kind of discover. I mean, that's the brilliance of science. That science is ignorance, self-admittedly ignorant. You know,
right.
That's what I like about science. They say, "Oh, we've proven."
So here's the beautiful thing. We had a guest here on the show, and he said, "Okay, the difference between scientists say, okay, we don't know anything, and we're trying to go a certain direction, and until we hit a wall, and then we can backtrack, and then we go a different direction, right? We kind of try to build one on top of the other." Jews had a shared experience. Okay, everybody talked about it. It's like Mount Sinai. Whatever happened there happened to a lot of people. Nowhere in the history of humanity has this large group of people experienced something, a shared spiritual, mystical, elevated, unified, whatever you want to call it, experience as one, even in the Bible. And they stood around the mountain as one. It's the one place they say that they were as one, okay? This shared feeling. And that was the thing that carried us through everything, that one thing that we feel together. Nothing else has any tangible qualities beyond that. And so what we're saying is, let's not abandon that. In the midst of everything and all the craziness, let's really find that definition. And with that, I want to ask you now, after everything we discussed, what do you think is the thing that defines us, that binds us? Because it's not a legal thing, it's not a religious thing, it's not an ethnic thing, it's not a biological thing. What is it? How would you define a Jew to an alien, as we like to ask people?
Well, I mean, that is a golden question that I'll be honest with you, there's far more clever people than I who can't really give you a concrete answer to that. What is a Jew to me is
in your heart. In your heart.
It's the question, like what I spoke about earlier. It is the question. And I think that questioning things is what makes Judaism as a belief system, as a religion, unique in practice, right? That to me is just so, it explains so much about Jewish people. The question everything, including what is told to you as a truth, what is assigned to you to believe as something higher than you, as more powerful than you, that has given you the very ability to question that. That's like a fundamental part of Judaism. So if you ask me what a Jew was, I'd say a question. To answer that question, it's a question. I don't know what a Jew is, and I don't really pretend to know what it is. And I think maybe that's not a satisfactory answer, but it kind of relates to the way in which I see so much of the world around me. It relates, I know we said we're not speaking about this, but it's part of it. It relates to the way in which I view God. When people ask me if I view God, I told you already that I'm agnostic. But when people ask me, my response to it, and it does play into what you're saying about how do we have that shared conversation. For me, it shouldn't matter to you or to the person on the street, to Avi down the road who sells me my pita bread, if I believe in God. Because in reality, enough people believe in God that God does, in fact, wield the power as if he exists, whether he does or doesn't. God wields the power of God in reality in the world because enough people have assigned that power to a higher being that they believe in. So therefore, for me as an individual, that's why I'm agnostic, because I'm like, it doesn't matter. I don't know. And it's okay for me if people believe they know and believe they know that it doesn't. And the question is not knowing and accepting that, what I'm doing about God, in the broader conversation about the Jewish people, a net positive. That's the question. Is it the net positive to kind of have that final sigh of relief and say, I don't know. I don't really know what a Jew is. I mean, we can do the generic things, like we can say we're a people from a land. We have a belief system in a God. We offer the world X, Y, and Z. I'm not saying these are generic. These are deeply rooted in who we are as Jews, and they're vital components of who we are. Or is it, is there something to it just saying like, yeah, we're a little bit of everything, aren't we? Like, I mean,
That's it.
yeah,
We're a little, we're
understand what we are,
So you have a Midwesterner who thinks God is this long hair, blue, long flowing hair with blue eyes, right? You
Yeah.
have a Hindu who thinks that God is blue and plays the flute, right? I had a job as a handyman in my early 20s. I went into a house, they had the Last Supper, and Jesus was black. So everyone has God.
They assign themselves to God, basically.
God is as big as you are. Like the bigger that you can dream God to be, that's as big. God has no limitations on what. That's why we didn't want to say like call it God, because every person who starts to define it, basically what they're telling you as they're talking is like the limit of their definition. Because there is no, I mean, you can't find the end of the universe.
Yeah.
So you're going to tell me in a few words, like what is going on here, right? Yeah. Okay. The Jews, when Abraham got this group together, from what we understand from the books that we have, and Josephus Flavius, etc., in Babylon, it was a cradle of civilization. There was no ethnic people. That was the metropolis of the day. So he took whoever, it's the people of the question, the people of this idea, whoever jived with this idea, those became the people. And it's our understanding in this whole work that we're doing here, that group is like a microcosm of all of humanity, that it's made up of back from ancient Babylon. It's a microcosm of all of humanity. And that's why we believe metaphysically, whatever way, that what happens in that group radiates throughout the entire network of humanity, because it's made up of people.
And this group is trying to ultimately, and this, if we look in our texts, try to resemble this quality of the creator. That's where the word Adam comes from dome, from similar.
Okay, don't get too esoteric on us.
No. I'm just no. Because I found an in, and I saw an opportunity, because it was everything Sam said was brilliant, because it's not about, oh, there's this guy on the wall and I like him. No, you need to be like this quality, this highest quality there is. There is no one there. There's not a person there. Yeah. But if there's a quality of love and you want to resemble it, you're on the right path. And it's so simple if you think about it. Forget about everything else.
Look, I'll tell you how I came to this conclusion. It's totally personal, but I'm happy to share it, which I don't usually do on podcasts. But I came to this conclusion. My father's like me, how I am, secular, up until the point where he actually landed up having a drug problem. And he comes out of a drug problem by becoming ultra-Orthodox. And I'm talking black hat, long beard, right? Now, the side note is that we don't have much of a relationship, but the point is that forces me to ask myself, as I get older, a specific question. And that question is, okay, so the religion that he found has become an addiction. Just take my word for that. It's a replacement of an addiction. But is that replacement a net positive? My conclusion is yes. Rather be addicted to going to the synagogue 3 times a day, even if that means you're not working, and even if it comes with all these different things, then be addicted to some sort of, harmful substance that is going to ruin yours and your loved ones' lives around you. So it's a net positive. So that's where I came to this thing of when I kind of came to the terms of being agnostic. At one stage, I was like, no, I'm Jewish. I believe in God. And then I was an atheist. And then I was like, I don't think I'm either of those things. Like, the Jewish meaning belief in God, not Jewish. I'm still very Jewish. But like, you know what I meant from a more religious lens. And I came to this partly through that question of just saying, well, him believing in God, whether God exists or not, was a net positive for the guy's life. And it was a net positive for someone else's life that I know who's an ex-Muslim to denounce God. That's what she needed to do to get out of her circumstances. And maybe she comes around to believing in a God again when she's healed. Maybe not at all. But either way, that was the role it played. Whatever it is, whether it's no belief in God or belief in God, it plays the role that the person needs it to play in their greater life.
So I'll tell you what we're addicted to. We're addicted to unconditional love. That's our thing. That's our drug. And so far, no overdoses, no side effects, and you can share it with everyone you meet. There's no there's no bad needles.
No limitations on it. Yeah.
No limitations. It's you can love as much as you want. So that's the beauty of it. I know we have to wrap. I put a quote in the chat. I would very short one if you could read that for us.
Where's it from?
That would be very.
Where's it from?
Okay. This one is from it's from Machshavot Haaretz. Okay, it's from like
You already said he's an agnostic and not religious, and you're.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just it's a good line. It's a good line. It's a good rapper. So.
Okay. You want me to just read that?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Cool. The love of Israel is rooted in every soul of Israel, a heritage from Abraham, who is the root of Judaism. As of our sages said, love your friend is the greatest rule of the Torah.
Simple. If we can agree,
well, I mean, yeah, I this is my thing. Like, I'm just like, do I agree with that being a message for people? Sure. Do I agree with it personally because I subscribe to the Torah? No. But if that's the message that people need, that's okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that. But you see, this is the contradiction that people have about me, because I'm very firm in my opinions, but I'm also super lucid in them. Like in that my opinions are my opinions. I don't know. It's a walking contradiction. I'm still trying to work out what the hell it is, where it comes from. But that is the thing. It's I'm very firm in my beliefs on Zionism and on certain philosophies and on politics and on Jews and on the way I see the world. But I'll tell you what it is. But I don't mind about the way someone else sees it. It doesn't bother me. That's what I mean. I'm very firm for myself on it. And it changes over time because I allow myself to be open, but I'm pretty firm on what I believe at that time. I'm an opinionated person, but...
Sam, I hope that young people get a chance to meet you, and I hope you get a chance to work with young people. Like, my son is 19, he's in college, and the things that he tells me, he's in an international relations program. He's afraid to talk in some of his classes, about his opinions. I really hope that that young people get a chance. You're way more relatable than we are, and your view is very clear. And I'm sure I speak for both of us that we wish you like a ton of success in this work, but hopefully you can expand the work and hopefully connect with younger people also.
Tell your son you've got my email address. Plan to contact me. I have no issue with that. We're more than welcome to get in touch with him and sit and have a conversation with him.
Awesome. Right. Awesome. Wow. So I'm running out of light here, and we have to wrap. Everyone, this has been an amazing chat with Samuel Hyde. Sam, thank you for coming here. Thank you for being our friend for an hour and a half, maybe longer, I hope. We would love to see more of you, and we'll be in touch. And obviously, everyone like, share, subscribe to our content. You can find this on YouTube, but you can also listen on Spotify to all the podcasts. And we are the Jew Function. We're trying to find our place in humanity and solve all the problems of the world. I think we can do it. So, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Take care.
Thank you.